all three of these classmates, like, start calling them racial slurs. And, like, the teacher, like, actually, like, pushed the little boy head down so he won't look at her or whatever, whatnot. And then she, like, just, like, draw to my lawn like he was a rag doll or whatever, whatnot. You know what I mean? And, like, you know what I'm saying? That was crazy as ever. Even, like, the other kids called, like, like, one of the, like, one of her sons, Monkey. The other one called, like, one of the kids the N-word or whatever, whatnot. But they didn't say the word, they just said the N. Just N. That's about it, you know what I'm saying? Real though. Anyway, that lady got her kids up out that school ASAP, and that's on Brooklyn. Anyway, so now, this, like, Lawrence, that, like, actually went off on this lady up in a, like, flower shop. He was, like, involved in a, like, human trafficking, like, scheme or whatever, whatnot, you know what I mean? Right. Anyway, so, yeah, I mean, like, that stuff was crazy as ever. I mean, like, it was him and, like, 8 more men, like, you know what I'm saying, involved with this shit or whatever, whatnot. And that's some crazy shit. Real though, I mean, like, dang, it was like crazy. They was using a flower shop so they could, like, move, like, do that or whatever, whatnot. So they could, like, go ahead and move people through the flower shop, and that's on bro. Anyway, now these, like, cops, like, actually, like, jumped on this man in medicine because he didn't want to talk to him or nothing like that, you know what I'm saying? So they jumped on him or whatever, whatnot, you know what I'm saying? And, like, when they finally got him down on the ground, one of them, like, actually blaked him down, like, with 3 shots in him or whatever, whatnot. They actually killed the man or whatever, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? All because he didn't want to talk to them. And that's some crazy stuff, gang. And that's on bro. Anyway. Now, there is some footage about Nolan. About what happened to Nolan or whatever. Up on the down, face down in the sand or whatever, whatnot. And these boys up there kicking sand on him, and he up there struggling to, like, you know what I'm saying, come to or whatever, whatnot. Know what I'm saying? And it's crazy as ever, gang. I mean, like, shoot, and the video is up there. For real though, I mean, like, shoot, it was crazy as ever. You know what I mean? For real though, anyway, they, like, tortured him and all that, you know what I'm saying? For real though, I mean, like, shoot, and shoot, there's, like, bro was all picked down or whatever, whatnot, you know what I'm saying? They probably cut it or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But for real, that was lonely right there, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, shoot, they was, like, on Horns Island, and that's some crazy stuff. They jumped this boy, they took pictures of him, and they took a video of him or whatever. They must have took one friend off because one of the friends said he would leak all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? For real though. Because they pissed him off, and that's when broke. Anyway. Now, these, like, kids got on a road from Howard University. Or whatever, you know what I mean? For real though. Anyway, I don't know why they did that to these kids. Or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Well, should I say adults or whatever, you know what I'm saying? For real though, because they saying they didn't, like, pay for their, like, intuition or whatever, whatnot, you know what I mean? For real though, but nah, I don't even buy it, gang, you know what I'm saying? Because, like, shoot, I don't know, they didn't have no money problems or nothing like that, you know what I'm saying? For real though, I guess they didn't want them for, like, something else. You know what I'm saying? And that's some crazy stuff. Now, I mean, that's crazy as ever. I mean, like, shoot. I mean, like, they like, waited to get accepted, and then next thing, they like just figured out that they like being on the road. Like that's crazy. They had to like find out from like the mill, like right from their parents or whatever whatnot. And that's some crazy stuff, gang. Know what I'm saying? That's on bro. Anyway, now these cops like went to this like elderly old lady and they like actually like just like tackled her down on the ground, right? Because like she like didn't know English or nothing like that, you know what I'm saying? And plus like she had a knife in her hand or whatever. But she wasn't attacking people or nothing like that. And she couldn't understand what the police was saying. The police was up there trying to like speak to her like in English or whatever and then try to use Spanish. But she couldn't understand none of that shit they were saying or whatever whatnot. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, the neighbor stood up for her or whatever. Like just actually was talking to the cops like what I'm saying? Like why you doing that or whatever whatnot, you know what I mean? Riddle. Anyway. So they end up putting handcuffs on this woman or whatever whatnot. Not saying they actually put her up in the car, but before they put her in the car, a girl actually walked to the car to see what was up or whatever whatnot. You know what I'm saying? For real though. And she was talking to the woman, and the woman was understood her. Because she I think she was talking in that some African language or something like that, you know what I'm saying? I think she was speaking Swahili or something like that. You know what I'm saying? For real. So yeah, they that cost them $150,000. For real though. It's crazy as ever, gang. You know what I'm saying? For real though. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, shoot, they should never did that. That's that's some crazy stuff or whatsoever, whatnot. You know what I mean? Well, anyway, so yeah, I mean, shoot, I figured out how to put out pictures on community or whatever, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? Real though, I mean, shoot, it took a while or whatever, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? For real, but yeah, I'm gonna place some more pictures on my community or whatever, at the museum or whatever, whatnot, you know what I'm saying? For real, I'm gonna do all that. You know what I'm saying? They was on the pocket for that, though. You know what I'm saying? That's on bro, though. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, and I'm talking about the cops that took that woman like that. You know what I'm saying? That was on the pocket for that. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, just like I said, I mean, I'ma just go ahead and do that or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so yeah, because I still have plenty more to put on, channel or whatever, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? On my community, whatever, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not gonna bring it, step down or whatever, whatnot. I'm just put them on there, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Around because yeah, I might as well. You know what I'm saying? I mean, or they just gonna be staying on the phone or whatever whatnot. You know what I mean? For real. Anyway, yeah, it's time. It's time for all that stuff to go on my community or whatever whatnot, and I'ma do that. I'ma make it happen, gang. You know what I'm saying? For real. Anyway, yeah, I mean, and I'ma just chill, you know what I'm saying? Just do my thing or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or I'ma just go ahead and play my game. Or other than that, might just end up playing the game with the Brody or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Bro, I mean, depends on how I'm feeling. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, yeah, I'ma do all that. I'm gonna go ahead and make my lunch and all that stuff, you know what I'm saying? Though, I mean, yeah, cause I just got back a few hours ago or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Though, anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna just do all that. all that, get that all done, you know what I'm saying? For real though, I got this, you know what I'm saying? For real though, but anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, hit the bell notifications so you see my next upload and my next post, and I'll make sure to make another one tomorrow. And oh yeah, you can check out my previous videos if you're liking. So long, farewell, goodbye.